Thank you, Hannah. Are we doing a spotlight or are we staying like this? What's best for you?
I think we'll stay like this.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone. If you feel like opening up your cameras, it's always nice to see faces. And also feel free to write. I mean, I know that we have this information and you put it up, but feel free to share a little bit where you're coming from, just so I'll have a sense of who I'm speaking with. And that would be lovely. And also maybe you can add like the country that you're from and maybe the language that you speak or languages that you speak. So I'll continue, but maybe you can drop a note on the chat and I will share that um, I'm based in Tel Aviv. I commute often to Jerusalem, but I live in Tel Aviv, and like many here who have different life experiences. I too, my journey was very international in a sense, and I was born in Israel, and I moved back to Israel about 6 years ago. So after living for about 7 years in Chicago, so just enjoying the nice Israeli sun. But it would be lovely if you could share a little bit where you're joining us from, if you feel comfortable doing that. So, just a little bit about the program. The way that we're going to talk about it right now for a little bit, I'm going to share like for about 15 to 20 minutes about the program, about this course specifically, and its role within the program and the way that we envision it. And then we'll open it up for questions and feel free to ask whatever comes up to your minds. And so I'm going to start with a short story. Last week, we had an international conference, the first international conference at the Hebrew University um, to examine the relationship of Jewish identity, belonging, and education between Israel and the diaspora. So why am I sharing this? This was a 2-day conference in which concepts like Jewish peoplehood, Israel education, Jewish education, they all came up. And I was really fortunate to take part of these discussions. But most of all, what was made clear to me is the fact that at this time and age, we're confronted with some old questions that maybe require new answers. For example, what does it mean to be Jewish today around the world in this particular climate? And also maybe new questions for old situations that might help us better understand and better prepare our kids for the future to come. And most of all, I think that the real call of the conference across the board was how do we reimagine the future, right, of Jewish peoplehood, of the Jewish people? How do we confront the problems today and the role of Israel within these ever-changing identities? And part of why, and I'm kind of sharing this because these really pressing issues, I'm sure. We're based in Israel. We have a different set of concerns, or like different set of life experiences. But what does it mean for you all to send a child to Israel, for someone to engage with this question of Jewish peoplehood and Israel education within while they are in Israel? And part of what this course is trying to do is kind of raise this question or have in mind the idea that most of these teenagers are gonna go back to wherever they come from, right? Or start college the following year, or go on their life journey. And the idea is really to give them strong foundations, to be able to engage with and converse and have and develop critical thinking around what does it mean for them to be Jewish today? What does it mean? How do they examine their relationship with Israel? How do they examine the relationship with their home countries or whatever journey that they might pursue? And so, to that end, or with that in mind, this course, which is basically, I'm going to share how I designed it and also a little bit about what does it mean to take it. So, Overall, this is a year-long program, 2 semesters. But so there is a way to look at the overarching theme of this course, which is Jewish peoplehood and leadership. And then each semester also stands on its own. So it doesn't matter if if someone takes only the first semester or only the second semester. It's not that they missed out on anything, but it was about to create diversity within and the way that they complement one another, but also having an overarching theme. And the reason that I say it is because it's about the first semester or the course for the first semester, which we will, go take a deeper dive into today, is really from the Bible to October 7th. And what does this mean? It means that I'm gonna, or I will try to argue and convince the students that, in fact, we can see Jewish peoplehood already from the Bible, from biblical times. And it's not because we're going to spend a lot of time reading the Bible, but we will see the different narratives that exist within the Bible, which is, a really foundational text, not only for Jews, but all over the world and in most cultures. And really see how, or the way that the presence of diverse narratives within the Bible with stories that that are written in different forms, it was really about to sustain Jewish diverse narratives. So what does it mean to be part of Jewish, or what we call Jewish peoplehood, while also sustaining one's own identity, one's own language, one's own connection to wherever their physical home is. And so it's really about asking, where is the Jewish home today, and where is it for each and every one of the participants? So home can be, the house I grew up in. It can be home as a sense of feeling, or as a sense of belonging, but to like where is going back home, right? It can also be the city space in which we or the village or wherever we are located. And also there is also this question of citizenship. And then this question of Israel as a Jewish homeland. And what does that mean? And what role does that play? And especially within one's Jewish identities, and within that, what does it mean to learn about it while being in Israel physically and having relationship or getting to know Israeli society and Israelis. Um, so part of the way that we're going to address these questions that would be very pedagogically outspoken and kind of coming also to hear what their concerns are, the students' concerns, is really through forms of experiential learning. And what does that mean? There are a lot of gap year programs out there, and amazing gap year programs. And what does it mean to come to university, and who chooses to come to university? So of course, it's about opening one's mind to really cutting edge research and having really the privilege to choose from so many wonderful courses and work with professors from whatever the international school has to offer with the exchange student program. But within this class, they will really be this core group, right? And really being with one another. So they'd be able to also connect as a community, which hopefully they will also be able to carry on as they transition to the next phase, after they finish the program. And part of what we're going to do is we're going to use whatever Israel has to offer in order to kind of ask, how do we become critical readers, not only of texts, but also of realities? How do I negotiate, right? When narratives collide. So we are going to give a lot of focus to this question of narrative, how are narratives constructed, especially through the lens of literature and culture by large. And then ask, what are some of the narratives that have sustained, the state of Israel? What are the narratives that are seeing now? And then what happened after October 7th, and how has things changed, or to what extent, and how do we deal with these new realities in an ongoing changing climate? So really the idea is to kind of shy away from all dichotomies, or am I pro-Israel, anti-Israel, am I Jewish, am I not Jewish, and open up the discussion and our minds to have diverse sentiments around Israeli identities, Jewish identities, and ask ourselves, where did the Jewish story that is much broader temporally and geographically. Where does this Jewish story and the Israel story intersect? And how do we kind of rethink and reimagine the role of Israel within one's own Jewish identity? And it can have, diverse answers to this very, very complicated question, but it's all about forging my own relationship with Israel, the Israeli story, and through that, how do I what do I gain here that I can take with me as I go back or pursue the next stage of my own personal journey, academic and other kinds of journeys. Um, how is this going to happen? So first of all, yes, we're going to start. This is, it is an academic course, and we will engage with close readings, and we will read and we will analyze, and they will get like a toolkit of how do we exercise analytical skills. But then also there are different ways to teach today, and not only about sitting around the table and reading together, which we'll start from. But I'll give you a couple of examples of things that have been very successful in the past with different groups. So first of all, I come from the background of literary and cultural studies. So one of the things that I have done with many educators and also students is a session, for example, that I take them like a tour within Tel Aviv. It's called Between Two Squares, and it starts from Bialik Square and ends at Habima Square. And it's really about within. It's a route of four stops, and in each stop we examine through a specific poem that is related to the specific place in which we stand within Tel Aviv. We examine a different tension within Israeli society. So, for example, if we start from Bialik Square, so it's about this the tension between individuality and what does it mean to be a national poet, right? And kind of standing there on the hill, understanding that Bialik, when he came to Israel as already the national poet, it was really important to build his house on the top of the hill next door to City Hall, the old City Hall, where Mayor Dizengoff was sitting, because culture and politics still go hand in hand. They used to go hand in hand, and they still do. And to also explore other Jewish narratives, we will also zoom into different exhibitions within the Anu Museum. So, kind of exploring histories of the Anusim from Spain, or Dona Grazia Nasi, one of the really strong women of Jewish history from the 16th century, who not only left a mark, in world history in terms of a woman kind of moving the needle and receiving an inheritance, but also buying Tiberias for the Jewish people and asking what does it mean, or what are some of the commitments and or privileges occur within these relationships between the space that we are based in Israel, and world Jewry, and how do we tell the story of Jewish peoplehood today? Um, and one of my favorites, just to kind of give you another example, we will also be experiencing, because it's about culture and expanding culture, and really about kind of getting a sense of what culture can do, cultural practices. If in the beginning of the course we start with, a close reading of the Bible and really seeing or examining why do we have repetitions within the Bible, and what is kind of like this figure of, the compiler, the editor of the Bible that sits with all these, conflicting stories, and how does he preserve most Jewish narratives around the world that took place and so far have not been written, but only narrated verbally. So what does he do? So we're going to take kind of that ideology, but then we're going to fast forward, 2000 years to the comic show Hayudim Baim, the satire of that was performed in Israeli television. And I'm just kind of saying, and And we're going to have a workshop with the two creators of the show, Asaf Beiser and Natalie Marcus, really award-winning screenplay writers and directors. And we're gonna have a lovely workshop with them, kind of for them to explore or to share their view of the Bible and what happens when the Bible becomes the raw material of satire. Um, as some of you have heard, this show was also the cause of a really intense debate in Israel when they came up with their second season. It was canceled and then it came back because there was a question, can the Bible or should the Bible be a raw material for satire and to what extent? And then they will be able to share this with us or their perspective of how or what is possible or how they used the biblical materials and their learning in order to expand our thinking and to develop critical thinking around Israel, Judaism, contemporary times, and what can we learn from the past in order to better shape the future. But because we're not only intellectuals, so the second half of the workshop is really about for them kind of they're divided into groups and then they choose whatever biblical story they want. And with the guidance of Asaf and Natalie, they really kind of delve into a particular story and trying to see things from a different perspective because the Bible is very cheap in the way that it's like kind of it's very narrow in the way like they're not generous in how they describe characters or give us the thoughts of Abraham as he walks to right the promised land. So we have a lot of gaps that we can fill in, and that's where kind of our own imagination kicks in. And that brings us to imagination as a tool for leadership. Um, so there's much scholarship these days, especially in this climate, political climate, not only in Israel, but really globally. We see the shifts. And there is a lot of research that is being done about this concept that is called political imagination. And one of the things that I aim to suggest, and this is also what I presented at this international conference last week, it's really about um, kind of shying away from the political, adopting the imagination, but shying away from the political, which immediately can put us back in a box, right? Because it's about imagining another political reality. And rather than that, it's really what I encourage my students and my peers and the educators that I work with. And when I say educators, I really mean it's really broadly defined. It was everyone, like it's from all the big Jewish organizations where they're from the Sukhnut through Taglit, Nefesh B'Nefesh, Pinkus, Muzeon Anuk, Koret Foundation. It was really a very broad crowd. And it's really about how can we exercise what I call a literary imagination in order to open up our minds and really become each and every one of us an agent of change in our own community. So this is also kind of like where we're going to end the course, really about encouraging or really trying to dream big, like, writing ourselves into the history and the broad history of visionaries like Herzl or Echad Am or Leah Goldberg, each from a different geographical area, people who wrote in different languages. But, when we think of Herzl's novel, Alt Neuland, right, Old New Land, in which, he kind of talks about the possibility of establishing a Jewish state in Eretz Israel, it's not that we can walk with the book as a blueprint and say, oh, this is how it was supposed to be. It wasn't about that. And the novel was actually published 4 years after Herzl published his own manifest about that was called the Jewish state or the Jewish land. And manifests are problematic. It's really hard to read. So he writes a novel. And a novel back then, it was immediately translated to Hebrew, to Yiddish. It was like TikTok today or YouTube Shorts. It was like all over immediately, and really opened people's hearts because it was also a story of a journey. And it's really about, for me, to invite students to join the journey, not only to understand the Jewish past and the role that culture plays within it, but also to help people or to help students write themselves into Jewish history that is taking place right here and right now, encouraging them also to imagine the future that they have or that they envision for themselves. But also, how does that, is a piece of a broader picture of Jewish peoplehood, and what do they gain, and how do their experiences within this particular gap year program can help them enhance their thinking, expand their critical views, and be able to really form their own understanding with all the fake news that is going on, with all the real news that is going on. It's so much information is traveling around, and it's really about validating their own experiences and opening up threads of new ways of thinking in order to really be part of a broader story. So for the end of the course, they will also be able to engage within a final project. So typically, I always give the possibility of either to write, a traditional academic paper, but also um, to kind of engage within a project. What does it mean, a project? I had one student once, she was in Chicago, and she decided to write a paper about or to do a podcast about the Hasidic community in Chicago and klezmer music, for example, and then writing a 3-page reflection paper about that. I had another student here in Israel that he was from New York and really wanted to interview his grandmother because he wanted to do Aliyah, and she was kind of pushing against that. She had more than a Jewish identity, but a New Yorker, I like a New York identity. So it's really about, it was a beautiful intergenerational pursue. And really, and after the interview, using concepts that we learned in the course to write his own reflection paper and to engage in an analysis of their similarities, their differences, and what have he learned from her story, but also how does that inform his own story. So these are different projects that people, which with my guidance, they're kind of moving forward and really trying to form, it's a small cause. It's like within this particular moment in time, what is my vision? That can always change because it's really about not being scared to envision, but rather engage in a revision, a constant revision of current realities as we adapt to however our journey proceeds. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to open it up for questions.
I can say hi. I'm Karen and I'm from New York, and my daughter Leah is signed up for the program. It sounds beautiful and like a really relevant and timely, work for them, both in terms of where we are now in time and in the world, but also at their age and the transitions that they're making. And I love that it's very diverse in terms of the ways of learning, and it sounds very rich. My questions are more, and I don't know if that's the place, but more logistics. Is this the only class that they will share as a group, or there are other credits that are also just for the group that they are not taking with with the School of International Studies?
Hannah, do you want
The
to take?
Yeah, the ELI courses are currently just for ELI students. So in the fall, there's 2 courses. One is Dr. Michal's course, and the other one is Tomer's course, the Contemporary Israel. And then there'll be 3 ELI courses that are offered in spring. But at this time now, we wanted to create that small, intimate group dynamic also within the experiential learning aspect of it. So we haven't opened up the ELI courses to other international students.
Okay, so there will be two courses that it's just for the group. These
Yes,
two courses, yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm also going to maybe jump in for a moment because I see in the chat that someone was asking about spring. Hannah maybe can speak about spring, the three classes, but I can share about mine, which would be a sequence to those. So it will introduce new information to the student, new materials, and new lens to the students that will be doing the first semester, but then also be a standalone course that would focus mostly on the leadership aspect. So what this course will, or what the second semester will ask is really, how do I become an agent of change in my own community? And part of the way that we will explore it is really about thinking about theories of leadership. And I always like, one of my favorites is really the Why Question by Simon Sinek, with his TED Talk and the three circles of why, how, and what. And it's really about, how do I find, like, the question of why is not only what I do, it's really why, my own personal why, that can also change and shift and transform, right? But I mean, but this would help them not only in thinking about big leadership concepts, right? But also next year in college, they'll have to, they'll have to select a major. And when I was teaching at the University of Chicago, this idea that these students have 2 years, right, of coursework before they have to focus on a particular major. If you wanted to be pre-med, you had to start to take classes in biochem or whatever already at the end of the first year. So it wasn't completely, you're right. It's like, and then it's really about a process of decision making. But also within this model, in relation also to Judaism and these imagined communities that we are all part of, we will also be hosting different leaders, agent of change, people who can inspire them. Because then what we would want to ask is, how does theory and practice, what happens when they actually meet, right? Because it's like Herzl's Altneuland, right? It's like Herzl didn't even think that we need to speak Hebrew in Israel, but it wasn't about that. It's really about instilling within them the courage to try, right? That's all we want. We just want for people to have the courage to try. And in order to do that, it's really about meeting inspiring individuals that created meaningful changes, but it doesn't mean that it'll only be people like Adi Altschuler, for example, who established Knafaim Shel Krembo, like the youth group that kind of bring in kids with disabilities and kids without disabilities together, with this vision of social change, but also a school teacher, right? Because it's really about, how does she become an agent of change as an educator with her second graders? So it's really about bringing people from different aspects of active life. It can be politics, economics, culture, social change, education, and so on and so forth. And then kind of thinking about what happens when theory meets practice, especially because something that I've learned in my many years in Jewish education, and I worked a lot with like training Jewish educators and it was really about my own learning that there are different types of learners. So if, for these students, one person will be really moved by social change, but the other, sorry, will be moved by, someone like Asaf Beiser and Natalie Marcos, who kind of used satire in order to engage with critical thinking about the Israeli reality or the Jewish story, then I did my share, right? It's like, because not everyone needs to like everything, but it's about giving them a hook with something that they feel that they can move forward with, or inspires them in their own life journey. So this is a little bit about the second semester. And I'll also say one more thing. Sorry. But like in this day and age, I work a lot with educators and people are thinking, right? I mean, when I give up, when I'm on campus, right? I'm an Israeli shaliach wherever in the world, and now I want to create a program. Do I or do I not put a Hebrew word in it? Do I or do I not want to engage with these are real problems right now. There are lots of debates on, it's really about, is Hebrew a bridge or a barrier for people? What is my local language? What happens when it's cultural translation? What if I come to Israel and I don't even feel that I fit in because all of a sudden I'm the American or the Portuguese or doesn't matter. And like, what is the shared language of the Jewish people? These are real questions, and my hope for this program and for the students who would come out of this program, no matter if they decide to stay in Israel, if they decide to go to college, if they decide to do something else in their life, I want them also to have a community of peers, because the real goal is to create a shared language with which they could later on reach out back to me if they need me, or to have their own community of peers as they engage the challenges of what does it mean to identify as Jewish today in the world.
Thank you, Michal. Does anybody else have any other questions about the course or anything?
I have a question about the students. How many students will be in the first course of the first semester?
The first semester will have between 10 to 12, and then the second semester we're looking at over 15, between the 15 to 20.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Christoph, do you have a question?
Hannah, is this the right time to ask a little bit more about the logistics and what to bring, how to prepare as it's coming really soon, especially as we'll
We're
arrive to
gonna,
Israel earlier.
yeah, we're gonna have a later, mid-June. I'll send out an invite to everybody registered to have an info session about those logistics and questions. But if you have
And is it
specific,
fast?
yeah, if you have specific questions, you can WhatsApp me also as well.
Okay. And also, is there a way to connect the parents too? For
Yes, everybody, once we get the info session, once we do the info session, I'll also open up a WhatsApp group closer to when the semester starts for the parents.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Are there any other questions for Michal?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Uh, Um, I want to, and I'm curious to know how you see this happening. Like these ideas are amazing and deep and reflective, but I want to understand how you see the conversations happening on a level of an 18, 19-year-old.
Well, first of all, I'm raising a 12-year-old.
Yeah,
So,
same.
so yeah, and I will also say a 12-year-old who was born in Chicago and came to Israel when she was 7. And the reason that I'm saying it is because for me, this conversation is not, it doesn't only take place within the space of a classroom or on
Hmm.
the floor. It takes place in my research, and my book is about the Jewish home and how Jewish writers negotiated their multiple Jewish identities and sense of belonging between and before and after the Holocaust, and using their own literary imagination to expand the possibility of where is home. And then in my own personal life, needing to understand what does it mean to reclaim a kind of Jewish identity for me as an Israeli who was born here, but then relocated and needed to figure out that if I don't be active about my own Jewish journey, it's not going to happen because it's so easy. I don't have a state that kind of dictates a Jewish calendar. And then also with my own parenthood and my own life. And first of all, each of our session, and then this is a really great question because it's also not about only of content, it's really about pedagogy. So each of these classes, each session is going to be over 3 hours. So we have a lot of time together. And what I like about this structure is really for us to be able to engage with both um, direct conversation, right? For them to learn things that I have the privilege of giving them, but then also to have them be active participants in their own learning, which means that would need to analyze if I bring in Genesis 1 and 2, so we can figure out, together the differences between the stories and ask why. Why are there two stories? So we watch an animation film, but then they have to pick up, like find the differences. They also have to explore. It's not about now giving them long essays, but yes, I would want them to be able to engage with an academic essay because they are 18, and I've taught 18-year-olds in Chicago, and so it's not they. And I'm also really excited to learn from them because, so first of all, there will also be a use of AI because we will have to. I do it right now. I'm teaching at Hebrew U, Introduction to German Literature of the 19th and 20th century. And we are working with AI because it's about learning how to ask questions. And if I teach them anything, is that I want them to be able to assess how to differentiate between a bad question, like a question that doesn't solve anything, and an effective question. It's not good or bad. Is this question effective or ineffective? So when they hear or they have whatever tweet or whatever TikTok film that they see and they watch and they hear something or they read it in the newspaper, they're going to ask, who funds
Right.
the channel?
I
That's what.
think that's great because you're also showing how the course goes beyond the content, but it's also about the learning how to think and how to question and how to ask.
So one of another class that we're going to have. So Museum Anno, the Anno Museum, they hold the most ancient Bible in the world. It's called the Crown, Haketer, and it's called or Codex Sassoon and its other name. And one of the things that I love is that we not only see it, but we also bring in one of the people from the museum who speaks to us about it. And some of the questions that we press on is how did it end up at the Anno Museum? I'm going to tell you, you have to send your kids to the program to get this one, but and they'll come home and share. But who really owns it? How does such a Bible, and it's a really huge book if you ever seen it, how does such a Bible, how was it preserved? How was it? Who are the families guarding it? What can we learn about that? So it's really also about economics. Who's funding whom? I want them to be alert. I want them to know how to ask these questions, right? Because they're part of this ecosystem. So it's really all um, engaging in literary through literature, through the reading of texts is really for me about the reading of realities, developing critical thinking. And the reason that I incorporate AI is because I don't think we need to be afraid of it. We need to learn how to use it. Because if we don't do that, then I am being irresponsible towards my students because they won't have a job. Half of the high-tech industry was just fired in Israel last week. So it's our responsibility, my responsibility, So I'm not an AI specialist, and they should go and, learn AI from people who are really specialists in the field. But I do use it in my pedagogies because
great.
AI is only as good as the context that it receives and the art of asking questions.
Hmm.
Bring this back to how do I assess reality? How do I engage in conflict? How do I engage in debate? And how do I ask myself the questions around my own Jewish identity, my relationship to Israel, and how do I pursue in my own story? Does that make, yeah, does
It's
that?
amazing. That's great. I love what you said, especially the AI. I had never thought about that, and I wouldn't have ever thought about it in the context of this course. And the fact that you're bringing it in is very, it makes it expands the breadth of the course.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there any more questions?
I see a hand. Christoph, do you want to say something? Oh. You're on
You're
mute.
on mute. I can also try to unmute you. Hmm. Are you able? There you go.
Yeah, Christoph, we can't hear you. I think you're cutting. I think perhaps the connection is unstable. Maybe you would like to write it in the chat, your question? Yeah. Um, yeah, I think the connection is unstable. Um,
Can I just quickly ask, is this class, it happens once a week?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's once a week and it's going to be don't don't hit me on the academic part, but it's going to be 3 hours and 15 minutes with a break in between so they can have, some space and time to recharge and regroup. And I will say something about my own pedagogy. It's really about each and every session, we're going to have like they're going to work in groups a little bit in class and then also have tie-in sessions. What does that mean? It's really about processing what we've experienced. So that's kind of part of what they're going to have. Because it's a lot. And by the way, I think I mentioned it to Hannah in one of our earlier, one of our conversations last week that much of the processing that they're going to undergo after this semester, year-long program, this course, it's going to take place also after they finish it. It's gonna be a journey. So I will tell you here, they have an open channel with me, and they're always invited to reach out. I'm still in touch with students and educators that I had the privilege of mentoring or working with in the past 10 years and over.
Oh, wait, okay. Are there
Okay.
Hebrew lessons included in the program? And specifically for Michal's course, there's not, but the beginning of each semester, they have a 4-week intensive ulpan through the university. Perfect. Any other last questions for Dr. Michal? Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And thank you, Dr. Michal, for sharing about your course and what to look forward to. If any of you guys have any questions after, she just put her email also in the chat. So feel free to reach out to her as well as I will put my email there too. And yes, I think that's it, unless there's any other questions.
Thank you very much, Michal and Hannah.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good rest of your day or evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much.